Sometimes I'm never really sure how to start this. As I said previously, Reverend Lisa uses beloved, but that's not really my scene with these kind of talks. I'm just so grateful for the people who sign on, the people who watch it. And it's amazing how many different people do watch these, not necessarily when it's live, but the recording. In fact, I was working with a client earlier today, and it turns out that she watches these. Maybe not everyone, but she watches them, because I was telling her some things out of them and she knew, which is kind of good. Anyway, enough of me talking about that. Let's get on with the talk for today. Of course, it's Saturday and it's the 20th of July, 2024. And it's approximately 16:30, 4:30 p.m. if you prefer Central Time, USA, Canada, Daylight Savings. So here we go. Today's talk is called Paris Maybe Another Time. I wonder if he actually did that deliberately, because the Paris Olympics are about to start soon. The Tour de France is finishing tomorrow, and a friend of mine I was talking to earlier today, he's big on the Tour de France, and he was going to watch it after we talked, and I guess watch it tomorrow. So maybe that's why Reverend Josh picked Paris. I don't know, but it's not mentioned in the talk, so I don't know if that's just coincidence or if he intended it that way. First quote is, "I can't change the world, but I change the world in me." So I can't change the world, but I change the world in me. And that was Bono from the band U2. Ernest Thomas in The Science of Mind. Of course, he's always more scientific, quote unquote. Our thought is operated on by a universal creativity that is infinite in its capacity to accomplish. So if you want to look at it another way, when we put our thoughts and feelings into the divine mind, then that's when things start to happen and manifest. And that was actually from How to Use the Science of Mind on page 2. It's actually, I think, a better book. No, let me back off on that. I think it's a good book to start. If you start with the Science of Mind textbook, it can be kind of overwhelming. But if you start with something simpler, like How to Use the Science of Mind, I think it's a better introduction to all things science of mind. Somebody asked me the other day if Reverend Josh was married. Well, yes, he is. Not only married, he has family. And this kind of goes back to the beginning of that. He says, "I remember the night I knew I would propose to my partner, April Ann. It was one evening at Seal Beach CSL, Spiritual Center in California, when our board president and dear friend Yvonne asked me how my relationship was going. It had been a hard week at home, and I'd taken the challenges with April Ann as a sign that maybe things were not working out. It's okay, I replied, but it's hard work sometimes. Yvonne said, Josh, I've been married for 50 years, and it is still hard work sometimes. Finally, the reality snuck in through my ego and naivete. The hard work was not a problem. It's what bears the fruit of the marriage. He says, I remember the night I proposed. We had a babysitter for our 10-year-old, who I already claimed as my own. Therefore, I assume he wasn't the father of the child. For one only night. I was recovering from pneumonia and wanted to propose on the beach, where there just happened to be a candlelight vigil taking place for someone who lost their life. Sad, yes. Romantic, no. I got down on one knee, and so did she. Could a messy proposal be a recipe for a perfect marriage? We talked about going to Paris for our honeymoon. When we told our son we were getting married, we knew his response was going to be important. Where are we going on the honeymoon, he asked. Paris, ? Maybe another time. Hard work's not a sign that something is wrong. Imperfection can lead to something perfect. Paris is nothing compared to the love of a family. Well, this takes me back, and some of you have heard this story before. If you have, bear with me. My boss, Reverend Jesse, often repeats things, so I'm going to repeat this. When Barbara and I had been married for a year, we were living in the Netherlands. And we were going to a Catholic church there. It's the English-speaking Catholic Church of The Hague. And a big deal going on in the church at the time was called Marriage Encounter. Now, we were told that this wasn't for fixing failed marriages or failing marriages. No, this was a way to make good marriages even better. Well, I don't know if we were reluctant or not, but the bottom line is we went. And of course, we were working until, I think, 5 o'clock, both of us that day. And we had to go down to Belgium, to Brussels, actually, which was, I think, about a 3.5-hour drive, I'm guessing now. So we decided, well, we're going to get there late, so why don't we stop along the way and have a decent dinner? So that's what we did. We had dinner, we carried on driving. We got down to the convent. It was taking place in a convent in Brussels, capital of Belgium, in case you don't know. And we got there, I'm guessing, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock. It was late. But we felt pretty good because we'd had a good dinner. And we got into the convent, and all the other people in this marriage encounter group, the people running it and all the newbies like us, were waiting. They had specifically waited for us to get there before they had dinner. We had 2 dinners that day. Well, also found out a few other things. Well, the Belgian nuns are not averse to drinking beer, and more than that. But the important thing was this, that although it kind of got off to a rocky start for us that way, the weekend turned to be pretty good. And we ended up eventually joining marriage encounter groups. We ended up advertising it. And I'll tell you another time about the first time we were asked to talk about it in front of our church there. And the way you actually do it is that you're given a question, you write down your feelings about it, you exchange books with your partner, and then you read it, and then you discuss it. And the theory is that when you read it, it makes it easier to digest than if the person had spoken it outright to you. And obviously it worked because we kept doing it for a while. So that was our kind of introduction. As I said, we'd only been married a year when we went on it, but it gave us a pretty good start. And as Reverend Joyce says, you don't always agree everything with your spouse or your partner, however that happens to be. But what you do is, if you really love somebody, then you work through it. And you accept them with their faults and foibles. And sometimes you work out really good ways to deal with that. For instance, I don't know where she got it from, Barbara, but she actually came up with this brilliant thing when I said something and she disagreed with it. Instead of saying, no, that's not right, I don't agree with that, she started saying, well, you could be right. And it took a while, but eventually it dawned on me that, hey, this is a good technique. I can use it back on her. So I started using it back on her. Well, you could be right, Barbara. And of course, she saw the irony in it when we started doing this. But it's techniques like this that really help you get along. Another one I mentioned the other day is that sometimes, instead of accusing the other person of doing something, we will put it in the passive voice. Well, for instance, oh, it was forgotten to lock the door. And it kind of takes the edge off it. So things like this, I think, help you get along better, and just being honest with each other about these things. So we all live, we all grow. And when you can do it with a partner, I think it makes life so much better. It makes life so much easier. And sometimes Barbara thinks I could live on my own. No, I really don't want to live on my own, because I love having her around, because it makes my life more complete. So I know she's watching, and I hope she gets a kick out of this, because, hey, that's what it's intended to be. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we have our service. I've got the privilege of speaking tomorrow. If you want to know what I'm speaking about, then tune in 11 o'clock. Creative Life Spiritual Center's Facebook page. Hopefully all the technology works. We're always improving things. Eventually we'll have a new Wi-Fi system. But tune in tomorrow. And if you happen to miss it, then well, you can watch the recording. But I tell you what, it's always better to watch things live. It really is. And it's even better when you can be there in person. You know, I teach a class called World Religions at Lone Star College, a local community college here, at least twice a year. And after the pandemic, when I started being allowed to have students in the class again, I tell you, it made all the difference. It was so much better. The experience was so much better. I mean, people physically in the room with me that I could interact with. Yes, it's great on Zoom, but it's even better when it's in person. So if you can come tomorrow, that would be wonderful. And remember, Reverend Lisa will, of course, be on tomorrow morning reading more from Ernest Holmes' great work, the Science of Mind textbook. And I'll be back tomorrow evening, somewhere around about 5 o'clock. Okay, what's our affirmation for the day? Where the work is the hardest, the fruit is the sweetest. Where the work is the hardest, the fruit is the sweetest. And that's really about all I got to say for today. I think kind of speaks for itself. Some of Reverend Josh's things speak for themselves. You really don't need a lot of commentary from me. But I'm a minister, so sometimes I can't just resist commenting on these things. So until next time, namaste.